You get everything in a 45. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I packed very light, like literally 3 t-shirts, 2 pairs of shorts.
Dude, me too.
Like just minimal.
But you know what? There's something really beautiful about having less.
Yes, less stress.
Right? You have less things to take care of, less things to keep track of.
Yes. Not having materialistic things.
Absolutely.
Mini stresses in life.
Yeah.
Mini stresses.
The more things you own, the more you have to take care of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love the idea of being a minimalist. I love the idea.
Yeah, man. Have you? Do you know Marie Kondo?
Is this the guy that wrote the book?
No,
I
it's
don't.
called like the KonMari method. It's like a Japanese like cleaning method where what you do, you start with like clothing, things that you can replace,
right?
And the whole thing is like you thank the place that you're living in for like taking care of you,
right?
And then you dump all of your clothes, everything you own, onto the bed,
right?
Onto your bed or like a surface, and take everything off the hooks, everything anything you forget, you have to throw away later. So get everything. And then you end up seeing how much you actually accumulate, and you're like, whoa. And then you pick up each item of clothing, and you're like, does it make me joy? Does it bring me joy? Like, does it make me happy inside? And if it doesn't, you say thank you for the role it played in your life. It could have been you ended up buying something like at a thrift store because it was cheap and you never wore it.
Yeah.
So then there's a lot of emotions that come up, and a lot of the time we keep those things around because
you're just like, just in case.
Exactly. But the thing is, it weighs on us, right?
Yeah.
And eventually you do that with every item, everything in your house.
Yeah.
So like your kitchen and eventually it goes to like memorabilia, like photos, and you get rid of stuff like that.
That's when it gets tough.
It's super tough.
That's when it gets really tough.
Super tough.
Yeah.
But afterwards, like I felt amazing because things that I clung on to from the past, I feel like I could move on from it.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love the idea of that. It's like people sort of take it to the extremes, and something I've sort of like mentioned before now was with Bo and Tom is, have you ever seen The Minimalist, the documentary, or read the book? So this guy went like extreme with minimalist. So he decided to buy 7 outfits, all the same outfits. When he woke up in the morning, there's only one outfit you can choose. So now he doesn't have the stress of waking up in the morning having to choose an outfit.
It requires a lot of mental capacity.
Yeah, and he has like a MacBook for working. Like he hates materialistic things, but he has to have a MacBook to work. So what he'll do when he gets a MacBook is scratch it up when he first gets it on the outside. So now he doesn't have to stress out about having to keep it clean.
You know what? That actually sounds really nice.
So now you don't have to ever worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is so cool. I think it's really cool. I don't know if I could take it to that extreme.
Yeah.
Because I do like nice things, like some things. Like I like to have my iPad and stuff.
I also think like scratching it, I think that's almost a bit disrespectful to the object. Not disrespectful, but like I think we should take care of our belongings and kind of accept that maybe it does cause us stress.
Yes. But I guess if you're trying to decrease all those miniature stresses,
then you should just do Vipassana meditation. Just do Vipassana meditation and you will be fine.
You'll be fine. Okay. There's 2 different types of meditation, am I right, that you spoke about on your website?
Are you talking about Anapana?
Yes.
Okay, so Anapana is part of Vipassana meditation.
Right, okay.
So like it's Vipassana meditation is like feeling sensations on the body, at least like in this tradition that I do.
Okay.
But you learn Vipassana meditation in a 10-day course. So essentially like you have Anapana for the first 3.5 days, and then you have Vipassana. So Anapana is concentrating your mind on the breath, but specifically natural breath, and concentrating on a smaller area and smaller area and smaller area.
When you say natural breath,
yes.
Surely all breathing is natural?
Well, the thing is non-controlled breath.
Non-controlled breath.
So like, pranayama, you're controlling you're controlling your inflow and your outflow.
Right. Okay.
But then you have there's other techniques like when people are anxious, it's like, count in for 5, count out for 5, that type of stuff. So like what Anapana is in this tradition is just observing the natural breath as it is. So if it's fast, you observe that it's fast. If it's slow, you observe that it's slow. And it just like continues like that. Yeah. And then what that does is over time, you're able to feel the sensations on the body. in this area, and it gets smaller and smaller over the 3 days.
Right.
And then what that does is allow you to feel sensations on the body. And then
when you say sensations,
yes,
what like tingling?
Yeah, like so sometimes it's tingling, sometimes it's heat, sometimes there's pulsing.
Right. Okay.
Sometimes it's cold, and essentially, this the whole idea of this technique is just to purify the mind. So to get rid of like anxieties, to get rid of fears, to get rid of like passion, anxiety, like fears, anger, hatred, all of that. Because
you're trying to achieve baseline. Essentially, you're trying to you're cleaning and you're trying to reach a baseline. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like you're balancing the mind, and the thing is, there's like our conscious mind, and then there's unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we get those reactions of like irritation, I don't know, when someone's honking a horn or something, is because all of our senses, whether it's like seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, or thoughts in our mind, they create a sensation on our body, and a part of the mind says we either like it or don't like it.
Okay. The subconscious part.
The unconscious part.
The unconscious part, yes. Okay.
And then it feels that uncomfortable, it feels that sensation and either labels it as like good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a sensation that's good, the unconscious mind will be like, I want it.
Yeah.
And then clings to it.
Yeah.
But things don't last forever. So eventually you're going to be unhappy.
Yeah. I guess that sort of comes with this idea of our mental immune systems.
Immune system.
So I would say that you're sort of saying, so like there's a Andy Norman who is, I think he's a Canadian professor of philosophy.
Okay.
He has this idea where the same way our bodies have an immune system, our minds have an immune system.
Okay.
So if someone insults you, if someone says something about you and you instantly go, oh, well, you're this, fuck you, all of this.
Yeah.
You kind of just do it. It's your body just goes into this protective mode. That's just your mental immune system.
Yeah.
So like you can be like, if you're going to go to the extreme, you could say maybe if there's someone who had been indoctrinated or like was, let's say, easy example, a Nazi for 40 years, you try and convince them to no longer be a Nazi, that's pretty much impossible. So after that much time, their mental immune system, it doesn't matter if you give them truthful information, they still won't believe it. So I think the example he gave was Martin Luther King was a serial philanderer, cheated on his partner a lot. When the information came out, people said, no, this can't be true, but it was good and truthful information. But people's mental immune systems won't allow them to believe that, even through truthful information. And I sort of say it because you sort of mentioned we have these sort of unconscious and conscious reactions to something. And I do think the mental immune system comes into that.
Interesting.
I do. Yeah.
I mean, like, I used to like go a lot into like these mental philosophies and stuff like that because I did have like a lot of mental health history, like depression and anxiety, PTSD and stuff like that.
Okay.
But then what's lovely about this technique is you don't need to intellectualize. You just need to feel what's going on and observe it. And then eventually, if you maintain equanimous, like a balanced mind, at whatever you're feeling, could be like anger, could be like that irritation in the chest or whatnot. But if you remain calm and learn how to remain calm in that, eventually the mind gets rid of it. And you start to feel, and then as you keep remaining like balanced, the mind clears it and clears it and clears it until that no longer bothers you.
So how would you then, if there was someone watching now, and they were stressed, there was shit going on, and they were trying to find a new way, but because I've spoken to people about meditation before, and a lot of people who are stressed or anxious, as soon as they start sitting with themselves, they can't help but all the thoughts start racing, and then they actually end up getting more stressed because now they've isolated themselves, and they can't not think about it.
Yes.
So what would your advice be for someone who is feeling like that and has tried to sit down and tried to go through it, but they can't because it makes it worse? How do you practice clearing the body? How do you do that?
So the thing is, like, I mean, this particular meditation technique, you go to a course, it's completely free. Like you go and part of it is you have to face it. But another part of it that people, I think, don't understand about meditation is that you're not supposed to have a completely clear mind. It's like impossible unless you're like a Buddha, right?
Yes. Yeah, true.
So part of it is that acceptance that the mind is going to wander. And I mean, even before I did this meditation technique, I did other types of meditation for like 7 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
And even now, my mind still wanders. It still goes away, but it's not condemning the mind for wandering. It's just saying...
not condemning the mind, yes.
Yeah, it's just being like, oh, the mind has wandered. And then if you don't respond or you don't get irritated about the fact
That's the control.
Exactly.
That's the control.
It's just being like, oh, the mind has wandered. It's natural. And then you just come back to the meditation.
Go to the breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's starting to wander, focus on nothing but the breathing. And then
because I think like the hardest part, and I think when I first started meditation, the hardest part was getting irritated about the fact that the mind was wandering away. But then over time, you learn in meditation
it was detrimental. It was self-inflicted.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was spiral. Yeah.
But it's like part of the mental, the mental habit patterns of the mind that we've accumulated over time. Right? It's nothing like personal. It's not. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just we're human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just have to find your own control.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just not like, I mean, part of this technique is also understanding that like we crave things, that's a cause of suffering. We don't want things to happen, that's also a cause of suffering. It's just a part of life. And then the third one is attachment to like who we are, like I as a person, right?
Yeah. And
believing, at least for me, believing that I wanted to be this perfect person and not having this perfect mind that was like perfectly like concentrated, that causes a lot of stress.
Causes a lot of stress, but it's not attainable. Yeah, no one's got perfect.
You know,
because if you did, you wouldn't bother meditating. If it was all perfect, you know.
I used to think that there is no possibility of that perfection, but then after like really like going into this technique and seeing other people who've practiced for so long, like I wasn't Buddhist or anything, and I still don't consider myself Buddhist before this, but this technique, I think, if practiced long enough, can get to a stage where that happens.
I suppose unless I guess usually the idea of perfect is everything is 100%, everything is clean, everything is right. But I guess with meditation, the whole point of meditation is because things are not perfect.
Exactly.
So
that's
perfect,
exactly
it doesn't mean completely clean. It just means you're doing what you need to do to keep it in control.
I think it's not about control, it's about acceptance. Things like life, there will always be things that go wrong. Somebody will say something wrong, somebody will look at you funny. You book a flight, the flight gets delayed. Like all of those things will happen in life. They're unavoidable, right?
Yeah.
But with this like technique and this teaching is the understanding that everything will change, whether it's good or bad. So really, like in the end, like what's the point of wasting that energy, right? And if you have that balanced mind, eventually the mind becomes balanced with more and more practice, so that things don't bother you. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, like sort of going back to like all like the miniature stresses of life. Like if someone beeps their horn at you in the car, and instead of just going, "Oh well, fuck you," it's just it doesn't matter.
Well,
it doesn't matter. It's not.
It's not that it doesn't matter. It's like you like feel that irritation, that sensation, and you accept that it will eventually go. Yeah. And then
instead of letting it ruin your day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And besides, like I mean, like everybody has issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting. I think it was. Do you know Andrew Huberman?
No.
So he was a neuroscientist.
Okay.
And it was something he was saying. I hope I can remember this right. So if you lash out, so say maybe someone cut you off in the car, and you decided that you were going to shout from your car, as we sort of sometimes do, sort of say "fuck you," this and that. Once you've lost that, it can take up to something like 7 hours for your brain to come back down to baseline, because your body's gone into a fight or flight, because you now got adrenaline, because you're shouting, you've got anger, you've lashed out, and it can take up to 7 hours to completely come back down.
I mean,
which is a long time. If it happened on your way to work and someone cut you off and you started shouting, you've got the whole day at work where your brain is now trying to rebalance and bring everything back down to normal. So I can 100% see how, in your case, if you're just, it's going to pass, it's fine, then that's going to have this knock-on effect where every single day you're going to feel that slightly bit better. And eventually you're going to start dealing with it better. Eventually you're going to start meditating better. Yes.
I mean, it's not easy though. Like before I did this type of meditation, I like always wanted to be the type of person who was like calm and like not irritable when something goes wrong, or like be able to be compassionate. But it was always kind of like at the surface level, I was still like fuming inside. But just, then
you're keeping it internal.
Yeah, but
I guess it's the first step though, right? That's got to be the first step.
No, the first step, just go to the meditation retreat, learn how to meditate properly, work on it, because it's lifelong work. And the thing is, we have to train the mind in like a quiet atmosphere to be able to learn how to do it properly, such that later on we can do it when things go wrong.
Yes.
Right.
So how has it been practicing that as you've been traveling? How long have you been traveling for?
14 months.
14? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
14 months.
Yeah. I learned it while I was traveling. Though.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you come across it?
I was at a hostel in Albania.
Right.
And I had been traveling already for about 4 or 5 months by then. Doing like the typical, like, see this site. Then I realized that my escaping home and pointing fingers at my family or like my job wasn't the cause of my dissatisfaction with life. It was actually like all internal stuff I need to deal with. So then I was like kind of knuckling down, working in a hostel in Albania, and then I came across these two guys. Thanks, Tom. Who mentioned, I was like, where did you two meet? And he's like, oh, we met at a meditation center. And then I asked him about the meditation, and he's like, it's Vipassana, it's completely free. And I was like, oh, I feel like this is like what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
So then I immediately like tried to find like a place where I could do it, because it normally takes, there's such a wait list for it that
oh really
typically like 2 to 3 months, unless you go to Sri Lanka or New Zealand, you can get in like super fast.
Yeah.
But then I went to Spain. It was only a month and a half wait. So I got into the center in Spain, did the course, and completely changed my life.
3 days, did you say the course was?
No, so it's 10 days.
10 days,
10 days, silence.
Wow.
But after that, I can say like I have never been a happier person.
Was there, in those 10 days, was there any moments where you thought, oh, maybe this isn't it? Or was it like you went in, started, and it was just, this is exactly what I needed?
This is exactly what I needed, but it was tough. I cried every single day. But I knew...
In a good release of emotion.
Completely good release of emotions.
Yeah.
Like, I'd been carrying around, like, so much anger for, like decades. Like, my parents divorced when I was young. I was resentful to my dad, sorry, Dad, for, like, pushing me to go to school. And I was like, oh, the reason I'm not happy is because I couldn't go to acting school, or I wasn't encouraged to. I was encouraged to get like a typical job as like Asian parents, blah, blah, blah. It's everyone else's fault, not mine. But then after that, and I was able to like forgiveness. And I was able to finally be like, wow, my parents are amazing people. They raised me really well. Yeah. They are.
You start to see the right reasons of why they were doing what they were doing.
Not so.
Because they were doing it because they want the best for you, right? Do you know
Correct.
what I mean?
And they're imperfect people. And and I am so thankful to my parents. They raised me with really good morals. And they raised my brother and I. They paid for our education. And I have a really good family and great living situation.
Is this all stuff that you sort of realize when through those 10 days, those first 10 days, is this what sort of the crying was over, that release of emotion? Was this sort of stuff you realized then?
It was stuff that I understood at like a surface level. I was like, my parents have changed. Like what happened was in the past, or like the reason that I had like a childhood trauma that's in the past, but I could never really get over it. And then, but with this technique, it was like my unconscious mind finally understood.
Had you ever tried to confront it through any other forms of meditation and 100%,
stuff? 100%. Right. So I did EMDR, which is a type of counseling technique for PTSD.
Right.
I did counseling spent so much money for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Wow. Medication. I was on medication for 12 years. Sleeping medication. Goodness. Off that now.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy. And did you say this course was free? The 10 days was free?
So that's one of the reasons I was like, this is legit, because when I looked it up on the website, you're not even allowed to donate as a new student. Only if you're an old student who have completed the course, you're allowed to donate. because it's that volition of the mind that's like, I received a lot of benefit from this. Let me also pay for someone else to receive benefit. So there are centers all around the world, like 200 centers and non-centers.
So you have to be certified, essentially, to donate. You can't donate just going in at all.
Correct, because it's not the teaching is not for you.
Yeah,
you are supposed to accept from the donation of someone else.
I mean, that's really cool. That just that sort of that dynamic doesn't really happen anywhere.
Yeah, and like if you're poor, it doesn't matter. If you're homeless, you can still do it.
Yeah,
as long as you can register. Yeah. I mean, not everyone can do it. I mean, they're nonprofit, so if you have like serious mental health conditions, you're on like a lot of medication, and like if it's because the thing is, as the mind calms through this meditation, the thing is, when you remain calm, all of your old garbage that you've accumulated over the many years comes up on the surface. And if you remain calm, it slowly goes away, right? Yeah. But if it's really deep stuff, or you've got like schizophrenia or, depression, and you're actively going through like a situation where you're feeling suicidal or something, all of that does come up. And you have to have the mental tenacity and the mental strength at that time to face it. So, like, even myself, like, I was in remission from depression for, like, 7 years. Okay. Like, a lot of sadness and stuff will come up, and a lot of, like, anxieties will come up. And while you have a teacher and stuff, the only person who can make you better is yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess, yourself, but with the support. Yeah. With the support of the teacher.
All the volunteers are supporting you, so they're like, you pay for nothing. You don't pay for your bed or your food. Wow. Everything is like, the volunteers, they come there. They're old students. You can only volunteer if you're an old student, but they're there cooking like meals for you, setting up, cleaning up after you and whatnot. And the teacher, nobody gets paid. So everything just goes to the course, and it goes to the maintenance of the facilities.
And that keeps it raw. If no one's getting paid, you're doing it because you want to do it.
Yeah, and like I also go and volunteer at these centers because my meditation grows a lot. There's so much that you can like gain.
So are there a lot of centers sort of just around the world?
Yeah, there's like so the thing is there's like 200.
200.
Like 100 permanent centers, something like that. In like Europe, Canada, I was in Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, Spain. And I'm going to Malaysia tomorrow.
Ooh. Tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow for their for that. But yeah, they're everywhere. Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool.
Everywhere
That's great.
Around the world.
Yeah, so you've been training 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time. I know people do a long time, but that's a seriously long time. Have you been back home in those 14 months at all?
No, I haven't. So the thing is, I had done so I was actually only planning on leaving home for like 2 to 6 months. But I quit my job because I was like, I don't want any reason to like be forced to come back. But at 4 months, I realized I was like just knuckling down in the hostel in Albania, and I was like, this is my travel style, is to go much slower, not to like go and see like Eiffel Tower or Tower of London, like those type of sites. Yeah. And so there was something that was telling me like I needed to continue my travels. And then once I found Vipassana, that was in February. Then I was like, I need to focus on this, because when I go home, all the triggers are going to start coming back up. And I was upset with myself before that I was the person who could not be genuinely kind to my family. I was resentful, even if I really tried to be a good person to them. I would be irritated by little things they would do, or the fact that, they would talk a lot, and they wouldn't ask me how my day is, like all of those things, right? And those things will come back.
And it becomes, when you're in that mindset, it becomes confirmation bias. So now you're going to pick up on every small thing, like you said, sort of like they didn't ask how my day was. And exactly. in hindsight, it's quite easily done. Maybe they were cooking tea, or they were doing something at the time, or they're doing this, and you start picking up on everything. But usually, if you sort of weren't feeling that way, those things would always be happening. But you're only picking up on everything now because it's just confirmation bias, I guess. That makes sense. So do you feel like you now have the term would be the mental tools to be able to go back and respond to these triggers?
Oh, yeah. So the thing is, I'm very lucky that I've had the chance to sit as a student already 3 times this year. So I've gotten, each time I get like a little bit stronger and have like these things that just like click in my mind that I'm like, oh, this is in the past now. It's just, it's like something finally like light bulb moment where my body and my brain finally understand that that's in the past, or that's not how to deal with a certain situation. But when you like go and listen to the discourses, which are like the talks that happen every night during the course, one of them is like you have to practice for a whole year twice a day for 1 hour each time. So like 2 hours a day. And then if you do that for a year, you'll be able to practice the whole life. And so I wanted that strength. So at February, I was like, I'm going to do this for a year and go home. Actually, I'm not. I'm going home in December because of other reasons. But yeah, I do think I have enough capacity now.
Yeah. That must be a little bit exciting as well. It's to view home differently.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like before this, I chatted with my mom for half an hour, and I chatted with my brother and my dad for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like before, I would send them like obligatory I'm alive text. Like, oh, haven't messaged my family in 2 weeks. Whoops. Because I just didn't have the energy to like talk to them or listen to them or hear about what was going on. But like now I am excited to spend time with them. I want to like play Scrabble with my dad. I want to take my mom shopping. Like, and the things that would bug me when we're together won't bug me as much. Yeah.
You think?
Oh, I'm certain.
You haven't been back yet?
No, I'm certain of it. Even like when I talk to them on video call, like the things that used to bother me don't bother me anymore. I can talk to them I used to only, like I would be like fuming inside when I would be like talking to my family because all those like unconscious thoughts would come up of like, why aren't they listening? Why aren't they being like this? Why are they doing this? But now I can just like accept who they are now. Yeah.
I have to accept that, especially in this day and age, the dichotomy between parents and kids is so vast now. It is because of technology. And I think because now we are exposed to so much information, it's not that people are now more intelligent. It's not like we're more intelligent than our parents, but the type of information we have a huge abundance of because we go through it every single day. Like I sort of see the same, with my parents, where I'll have a lot of information. Like I drink, have you ever heard of like Huel, like the nutritional drink? Basically, it's like meal replacement. So it has like 26 minerals and vitamins in. So it's a full and complete meal. Like to get an actual like a plate of food with the same amount of stuff in would be very difficult to do. But trying to explain that to my mum, who says, "Oh, you're just having those silly drinks. You need proper food." Like it, do you know what I mean? Like I know the information I have, but because of the world they grew up in, that's the information they have. They still think breakfast is the best meal of the day, most important meal of the day. And I can say, there's now studies that show that's not true, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think it creates, you have to, especially if your parents are a little bit older, because, it's, if you think when they were like growing up, what they had for information was newspaper and maybe the TV eventually, which was literally just the local news or the national news. What we can see now, like even yourself, like being able to, like, if you wanted, so when you go back home, if you needed any more information on your practices or your meditation, you could just go straight online and you could find stuff. You could go to YouTube, you could find other people. Where like parents, they're still, I think some parents are still in this mindset of being very local to where they live. And I think that's where the conflicts start to come from, because the picture of what we're seeing is different. Because we use perspective, right? We use a broad scale of perspective. So what I get from what you're telling me is that you're now able to tap into your parents' perspective, and that's why things are easier. Now you almost understand them a little bit more.
I understand them more, but also I accept that we might not, like before, my view was so important. Like
exactly.
my
so
view.
You understand their perspective is different from your perspective. You're just tapping into theirs, not trying to make them merge.
Exactly, or trying to make them understand. Like, it's at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter so much that they will share my perspective, and is it worth putting that energy?
They shouldn't do.
Yeah.
They shouldn't do. Yeah.
And is it worth like spending that energy to try to convince them and cause a lot of like negativity? No. Like it's better to just be like, oh, okay, like we can never change someone else. We can only change ourselves.
Exactly. But we can always help others. We can always help others. The same way your teachers have helped you through meditation.
But the thing is, I've learned, at least, that as much as I want to help others by give advice to do whatever, the best way I can help others is to work on myself, be a happier person, and that will help others become a happier person. That's it.
If you had a very good friend, like at the moment, would you say you're in a very comfortable state with yourself at the moment? Yes. You're a very happy state. So if you had a friend who wasn't in the same place, I would then argue it's then hard to work on yourself to help them.
A drowning person cannot help another drowning person.
No, that's true. But would you say you're still drowning?
I'm not, no. But there are times when I'm really tired that I would say I'm not in a space to help someone else.
Yes.
But sorry, what was your question?
So you were sort of saying, the best way to help others is to work on yourself. But if you're currently in a state of happiness, you're not drowning.
Oh yeah.
And you had a friend who was drowning.
Oh, then of course, then absolutely. What if I have the capacity to help others? Of course, I'm going to help others.
Yeah. So do you think you're gonna dive into teaching this meditation like properly, like almost,
It's not possible to become a teacher.
Okay.
Unless you've been practicing this for it's not about the time, it's about the understanding of how this technique actually works. And to become a teacher, you have to take like a 60-day course. And the thing is, it's all about the volition. And the teacher who brought this to the Western world, he was asked once, how do you become a teacher? And his response, I'm paraphrasing, is, if you want to become a teacher, you will not become a teacher. Because becoming a teacher, you have a lot of power. It can increase your ego.
Yes.
And that's what you're trying to dissolve in order to
get concerned to why someone wants to be a teacher.
Correct.
People, I guess, find out they like to or want to teach because they like to help others, not because they want people to listen to them talk about what they know.
But it's very easy when that our ego can grow so big. So of course,
without realizing as well.
Absolutely.
Like it can just happen.
Exactly. And of course I would love to teach this one day, but I also realize that there's a lot of good that I can do without being a teacher. Even just like I work in healthcare, or I can volunteer at meditation centers. There's always things that can be done that is not being the head person.
Yes. And maybe one day, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
How often are you practicing this through traveling?
Like at a center or daily?
Is it a daily thing? Like sort of like wake up in the morning, first thing you do before you go to bed?
Yeah, exactly. Sort of so I do an hour before bed, and then typically I aim for 2 hours in the morning, because when I can clear, the thing is, those reactions that come up, like throughout the day, we're picking up different input, different reactions. So the night meditation clears those so that, your brain is not going crazy, like thinking about things. The unconscious mind is generating things, right? Yeah. And then in the morning, you're clearing what has developed during the night. So if I clear that, I'm a much happier person. I'm able to be more generous. I'm way more patient, and I have the energy to talk to my family, to talk to friends, be really efficient at work.
Something that all those years of money on going to counselling and other medication couldn't do.
The thing is, there's a balance. So, I was in a stage where when I got depression, I had thoughts of self-harm. I had to drop out of university. Or take a break from university, and then a few years ago when I was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety, I also had to stop working. And at those times, meditation can only take you so far. So I don't know if you read on my blog. I'm a pharmacist.
Yes.
Yeah. So medication doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't fix the underlying problem, but it will bring you to a stage where you can get tools to work on it. So someone who's really depressed, of course meditation or you need medication to bring you up to a stage where you can actually meditate properly. These are tools, and then the thing is, if you actively work on the meditation and deal with it and face those problems, then the medication can go away.
I guess then too many see the medication as the answer. Which kind of makes sense because if you ever get ill, you give a medicine and it sorts you out. But I guess depression obviously is very different. Like you say, it's a tool. It's not the answer. So I think maybe people rely too much on the medication.
It's really hard. Like especially when having depression, like you have no energy. Like every little thing bothers you. Like wondering like why someone looked at you weird. Why there's dirt on the floor. Like everything just goes through this negative filter. So having medication will just bring you to a stage where you can actually have a more balanced mind, so that you're not constantly bombarded by these thoughts that aren't necessarily yours.
Aren't necessarily yours.
I would say they're accumulation of like negativity over time, but the real you is in there, and the real you is happy. You just have to like.
Is it not accepting that is also the real you?
Yeah, acceptance that the thoughts are there.
Yeah. But
not getting so attached to why. So like for instance, part of the reason like for depression and anxiety is we have these spirals that occur. At least in my own experience, I can't speak for others, but for instance, like somebody, like a patient would come in and they would say something to me, maybe it's like slightly critical, or they would look at me and be like, why is this taking so long? And then like I might be like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry about that, but inside I'll be like, how dare you? I'm so mad. And then it's like, and then I would start thinking
customer service.
Yeah, right. But then I would start being like, oh, why am I so mad? Oh, that's not the right person to be. And then I'd be like, oh, why am I having these thoughts? And those thoughts just spirals down, right?
Yes, yeah.
So like acceptance that the thoughts are there, but you don't need to attach to them and you
don't need to give energy to them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's already taken enough energy that you've had the thoughts. Now you don't need to attach anything to them.
But the thing is, Vipassana actually like clears those, and I'm like, wow, I have so much more energy now.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, Finn, how long have okay, how are you feeling? What are you going?
I'm great. Lush. I have energy.
Sweet. Okay.
I can talk about this meditation technique like for ages. I'm like so happy. Like seriously, like nothing in the world like solved my problems except for this. Like I did yoga. I wanted to become an instructor. Medication for years. I used to think I needed 10 hours of sleep a night in order to function properly.
Yeah.
Right now I function on like 7 and I still have way more energy.
Oh. You can oversleep. You can oversleep. So maybe you're oversleeping a little bit.
Oh no,
you can oversleep and you can go to sleep debt. It can go both ways.
I felt I was always in sleep debt. But I think I was just anxious about the fact I wasn't getting enough sleep, which just took more energy.
Spiral again.
Absolutely, yeah. So many spirals. Spirals.
Yeah. So what made you want to start your blog?
My blog?
Was it more of like a journal thing?
Yes.
Was it?
So my blog is World of Wandering Minds. It is because I have ADHD.
Right.
And when I was traveling, I was like, oh, I'm picking up a lot of like tips and stuff. And I think it would probably be helpful for people who have ADHD. And maybe like people who have ADHD typically aren't as organized. It's like hard to get things done because there's so many like competing thoughts going on in the head. And I was like, well, here's like, I have some ideas on how people can actually like travel with ADHD and also not get so overwhelmed. So people with ADHD tend to have sensory sensitivities. So like if things are too loud, tastes are strong, there's different textures of clothing, like all of these things like go into the mind and like are more distracting than say what we would call a neurotypical person. And so I was like, oh, like I picked up a lot of tips like how to hostel, how to have your own privacy, how to get enough rest while like traveling, that I was like, oh, maybe I will start a blog. And it was that. Plus I was like, oh, I want to try drawing comics, drawing my comics.
Cool.
So then I had a platform for it.
That's very cool. Where can people find your blog?
worldofwanderingminds.com.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Just in case anyone is listening and would like to go and see it.
But now it's kind of morphed a little bit. It's become more of like a travel diary. So like people who I've met along the way can see where I am in the world. And also it's become a place where like for mental health. After I did Vipassana, I was able to finally like be very open about it. I started telling people like, hey, like I've had a mental health history. You probably didn't know because I'm a very cheerful person. And you see me, but I had depression, I had anxiety. And so it's become a place where I want like others to see like mental health is a problem, but it's okay. So it's kind of like a diary of my journey now and travels. And
it's another thing that everyone has to deal with in their life.
Everyone is suffering. Everyone's struggling. No matter how happy someone looks, there's always problems.
Of course. We wouldn't be as fun otherwise.
Yeah, I think, you know what?
Everyone would be really boring. If everyone was completely fine all the time, had no issues ever.
Yeah, impossible.
It would be,
I think the reason we're on this earth is to learn how to deal with those issues.
I think it's possible to achieve it in the sense of if you're being stripped, to like to nature. So you've got these people who like to go and live in the wilderness for 6 months at a time, and they don't see anyone, but it's literally just themselves. Because they're not thinking about that meeting next week. They're not thinking, oh, I've got to go to work or sort this out. I've got to tax my car. They have these stresses of, I need to eat tomorrow, you know? But they don't have these extenuating, like, sort of stresses about what's going to happen in a year's time. Where's my job going in 2 years' time? And all these sort of things. So I think it's possible, if you're stripped everything to its natural state, that you can achieve something where it's not stress if it's to live. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not a choice anymore, but people can avoid stressful thoughts, procrastination, where if you were to procrastinate out in the wild and like that, you die. That's it.
Yeah.
You can't procrastinate. There is no such thing as procrastination out there because you don't have a choice. If you want to live, then you have to go and hunt, you have to go and pick berries, those sort of things. So I think the only way humans can really get to that state is if you're completely out of nature.
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, perhaps maybe before. Before I would have thought that. Because I was always stressed about like the future, like making enough money and stuff like that. And truly, like being in the present is how I think to be less anxious and stuff like that. But over time, that can be trained, and you can still live in the regular world. As long as we're able to have that perspective, I think, and be aware that our mind is worrying about like the future, what we're going to eat, our job, all of those things.
Yeah, I guess in this world, you're never going to be able to get rid of that. You'll never be able to get rid of always planning ahead, because we always have to plan ahead.
There's a time for planning ahead, and there's a time for being, I think.
There is, but I think if you're living at home, so like say obviously you live back in Canada or I'm back in the UK, we have to be able to structure our lives by weeks and months, otherwise we don't fit into society. Because if you're going to work, then you're working Monday to Friday already. You know, you've got a paycheck comes in every month, now you've got another structure. You know, you have to pay your rent. You have to have these structures if you want to function.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to have, so you always have these stresses of what's happening next week, is, you know, my bill's going to get paid, and sort of these sort of things. So I think you will never be able to. I think obviously meditation is such a great way to deal with those and make sure you keep on top of those things and not allow it to get too stressful. I think in this day and age, it's too much now. I genuinely think I think there's no escaping it unless you're sort of doing something like traveling. Is like probably one of the first things I've managed to do in my life where it is a lot more. There is no structure. If we decide that we're going to get up and go to Thailand tomorrow, we can. If we want to go to Malaysia, we can. We don't have to be. There's nothing holding us back. It is just, what do we want to do tomorrow? But obviously, a lot of people can't just come out and travel. A lot of people have a mortgage to pay on their house. A lot of people have a family. If you've had family quite young, you have to support them, and then you're stuck in this spiral of structure.
But I think it's also, I think part of the suffering in that is that wanting to be away from that structure, right? That, oh, I'm stuck in this 9-to-5 job. Like, if there's like that acceptance and just like not thinking so much about that and just being like, oh, I'm working now, and just being in the present, I think regardless, it can still be okay.
What if you're someone who doesn't deal with structure well? They don't like structure.
I'm not someone who loves structure either. I mean, I like structure to some extent, but I love flexibility. But a lot of the suffering, that irritation, comes from not wanting it, that aversion, that wanting to be away from it. So if we just accept that that aversion is there, and eventually that irritation, whatever is unhappy, like whatever isn't going well, whatever we don't like, will eventually pass. It becomes much more bearable, and eventually it becomes something that was causing you to feel unhappy actually becomes something quite joyful.
Like your family, for example.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Clear distinction of before and after.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
That was fucking great.